We hear people say, well, this law says you can shoot anybody if you feel the least bit scared of them. Anyone who tells you that has told you they never read the law. Google that statute. Look in any of the states, and these are the majority of the states, as Clayton told you, that have the stand your ground principle. It doesn't say you can shoot because you're scared, because you're nervous, because you had mere suspicion. You'll have to show that your action was reasonable. Now, what you want to do in the Florida statute says reasonable. It doesn't show you how to find reasonable. So you do a Google search for the Florida jury instructions, and you'll find out that just like every other jurisdiction in the country, they use another English common law doctrine called the doctrine of the reasonable person. And it's essentially a three-pronged test. The trier of the facts must ask themselves, what would a reasonable and prudent person have done in the exact same situation as this defendant, knowing what this defendant knew under the circumstances? So if anyone tells you, gee, this law says if somebody looks at you cross-eyed, you can shoot them, they're telling you they never read the law. They're telling you they don't understand the concept. Basically, this has not been a huge sea change, as Clayton explained. Even in the states that still have the so-called retreat requirement, again, we need to read the fine print. Nowhere in this country has retreat ever been demanded unless it could be accomplished with complete safety to oneself and to others. Those others being those within the defendant's mantle of protection, their family, their customers, in a robbery of the store that they owned, something of that nature. We've got, what, about 100 people in here? Let me ask you a question that I've been asking my students for many years. Can any of you think of a situation where you would shoot a human being to death if you could have simply walked away and retreated in complete safety to oneself and others, without trying to outrun a bullet, without trying to turn your back on a drawn knife, without trying to walk backward faster than another human being can walk forward? I see no hands. Don't feel bad. No one else has ever been able to answer that question for me either. It's not a change in how things are done. We're allowed in this country to use lethal force to defend ourselves, our families, our loved ones. When we're in situations of immediate, otherwise unavoidable danger of death or great bodily harm to ourselves or to others within that mantle of our protection. Historically, it's been a three-pronged test to determine whether that situation existed. And different jurisdictions, different police academies, different training schools will use different terminology. But basically, the three factors are most commonly known as ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. Ability means your opponent has the power to exert deadly force, that is, to inflict a fatal injury or a crippling injury. Often that will take the form of a per se weapon, the knife, the club, the pistol. It can also take the form of disparity of force. Disparity of force is a category of situations where the unarmed attacker has such a physical advantage that he's so likely to kill or cripple the armed person that advantage becomes the equivalent of a deadly weapon and allows his intended victim to respond with deadly force. We can see examples in this room. Anyone in here with a physical handicap attacked by an able-bodied person is facing disparity of force, and in a true violent attack is authorized to use a deadly weapon in self-defense. As a general rule, the female attacked by the male, because society recognizes males tend to be larger, have greater upper body strength, and have been acculturated to be more aggressive. We spoke of the physical handicap. That can also be a handicap that occurs in the course of the fight. You're an able-bodied man in prime of life, but in the course of the fight, the other man has been able to break your kneecap. Now you can't move away from him. Now you can't fight back on an equal force level. At this point, we've reached deadly force level for you to respond with. It could be something as simple as position of advantage. The two of you are exactly the same height, weight, physical skill. But the other man manages to get you down, and he's banging your head against a rock. where the other man gets you down and he's stomping you. A kick that before might have broken a rib, when you're down on the ground, now becomes lethal force. Because if you've ever read in certain law books that are laws of states that a shod foot is a deadly weapon, doesn't mean a guy kicking you in the butt. It means if you're down and being stomped. If my colleague on the left throws a punch at me here, I can slip the punch, I can roll with the punch, but if he gets me down, I can't do either of those things. And now my head here is caught between the underlying ground and the crushing force of his whole body weight. And in that situation, his position of advantage becomes the same as a deadly weapon and would authorize me to draw my gun or knife in self-defense. Force of numbers is an extremely common example of disparity of force. The single individual attacked by 2 people, 3 people, 4. So that would be the ability element. The opportunity element means capable of immediately employing that power. If someone up there in the back row was threatening to stab me, I'd certainly be concerned about it, but he has a great distance to travel. He has to get past several rows of seats, and he has to get past several people who, at least one of whom I hope, would stop him from stabbing the poor little old man. But if instead he's up here with us, nothing in between us, the tests have shown since the pioneering work of Dennis Tueller in 1983, the average adult male from a standing start can close a distance of more than 20 feet and stab their victim in an average time of 1.5 seconds. So in that situation, the opportunity factor would be in. And finally, the third element, jeopardy. Jeopardy means his words and or actions manifest an intent to cause death or great bodily harm as it would be interpreted by any reasonable and prudent person such as yourself. When those 3 things come together, deadly force is warranted in self-defense.